Great. So welcome, everyone. Like I said, I'm Lisa Damon from Massachusetts Farm to School. I also am excited to have some of my colleagues from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education here on today's call. And once we end the slideshow, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers, and we can point them out a little bit more clearly when we're all on the screen together, and they're on today's call for to provide any clarification and follow up to today's presentation. So first, I just want to provide a brief overview of Massachusetts Farm to School. We are a statewide organization that strengthens local farms and fisheries and promotes healthy communities by increasing local food purchasing and education at schools here in Massachusetts. And we really work to support this mission through providing professional learning opportunities, networking opportunities to stakeholders across Massachusetts and beyond. We do a lot of policy and advocacy work here at the state level, and then also have a host of communications and programs like the one you see highlighted on the slide here. Are one of our prominent programs, our Harvest of the Month campaign that we have over 140 schools participating across the Commonwealth that many of you may be aware of and or are participating in. And I'll just take a step back before we really dive into the meat of the grant program and just share a little bit about how our organization and many of those doing the work across Massachusetts approach farm to school. We really try to talk about the 3 C's of farm to school. We get approached by stakeholders across the state of how to start farm to school work or how to expand it from all different angles. And so we really try to focus on a holistic view. So it's not just what's happening in the cafeteria or in a garden, but really it's a program and work that can happen across the whole school system and across whole communities. And so the 3 C's of farm to school talk about classroom, cafeteria, and community. And so we have really strong work happening in classrooms and by educators across Massachusetts through taste testing, curriculum. We have amazing farm to school work happening in the cafeteria setting across the state. And then we have nice, robust school gardens, community gardens, other nonprofit organizations doing this work in cities and towns throughout Massachusetts. And so we really try to think of farm to school as not something that's limited to one sector of education or communities, but really something that touches all parts of schools and communities throughout Massachusetts. And so to narrow down further, to really focus on what we're all here to talk about, which is an exciting new funding opportunity here in Massachusetts, which is named Massachusetts Fresh Grant, the Massachusetts Fresh Grant, and that stands for Farming Reinforces Education and Student Health. And so this opportunity was just recently released by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, a new statewide farm to school and farm to early care grant program. Just a note, this grant program was funded through some COVID recovery funds this past year, past 2022, where the state legislator allocated $1 million to fund what we're calling the first round or first pilot year of a farm to school grant program. So the funding was awarded to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, as we say for short, and they are the agency administering this grant program, and have recently released the funding application statewide. And so we'll talk a little bit about that process and details today. But they've also released an anticipated award of up to $300,000 in grants this first round of funding. And I should say, like I said, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end, but if you have any burning questions or clarifying questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. My colleague Dinah is monitoring that and can shout them out to me if we need to back up or pause and provide any further clarification. So the Massachusetts Fresh Grant eligibility. So it is available to any national school lunch program sponsor or child and adult care feeding program. So that includes K through 12 schools, early education centers, government, for-profit, and community-based organizations that sponsor the National School Lunch Program or CACFP, Child and Adult Care Feeding Programs. These grants have been divided into what DESE is calling 3 tracks of funding. They have specifically so that they are accessible to schools or early education settings that are at different levels of work or have different needs for the farm to school program. So they're mindful that there's not a one size fits all farm to school grant or farm to school program. So they've purposely created these 3 tracks so that this funding is hopefully more accessible and approachable to the different institutions looking for funding. So they've created what they're calling the significant investment track. And this is a more sizable grant, up to $50,000 is the application. And that's available to any national school lunch or CACFP sponsor. And that grant track is specifically to support sustainable plans to integrate farm to school into their child nutrition program or curriculum. And so that one really is, like we talked about, a bigger investment, some significant investment in holistic approach, someone that may really have a bigger program and they want to tackle that with a little bit more financial support. And then DESE has created the K-12 farm to school startup or expansion track. And those are for grants $5,000 to $25,000 and are eligible to national school lunch sponsors to support startup or expansion of farm to school programming in the K-12 setting. And then similarly, DESE has created the early education farm to school startup or expansion with a same size grant award of $5,000 to $25,000 available to CACFP sponsors. And again, to support startup or expansion of programming in the early education setting. And so with those funds, DESE has really detailed out eligible activities in the application. And I should say we'll be sharing all of these slides electronically and the recording, and I'll reference where all of this information lives on DESE's website as part of the application, and then also on Mass Farm to Schools website. So you'll have access to all of this information and more as you start to dig into your application. But grants are designed specifically to fund startup or expansion of farm school programming in K-12 or early care settings. And those are including, but not limited to, kitchen equipment, specifically to prepare local food for schools, snacks, meals. That can include produce, meat, seafood, dairy items. The funds can also be used to provide training for kitchen staff, professional development for kitchen staff, and also training and professional development for educators, either in K-12 or early care sites. About, again, specifically to talk about local food and integrating food systems lessons or curriculum into their classroom. And then the funds can also be used for infrastructure and programming for curricular or classroom activities, specifically school gardens, so that these activities can support what's happening in other pieces of the school, or if that's where schools are looking to really start up and expand their farm to school programming. I will add, and I imagine this will be a question at the end, so funds can be used for staff time, but only if it's an expansion or additional staff time adding to the farm to school programming that the application describes. And we can talk a little bit more about that, and this may be a piece where DESE folks can provide further clarification if I'm not clear about it, but it cannot be used for regular staff time FTE coverage. It's can only be used to cover additional staff time to support farm to school activities.
Lisa, there is a question in the chat. Can funds be used to purchase grow towers? And can funds be used to purchase local farm produce? And a third question, by staff, do you mean existing staff or new staff?
Again, so grow towers, I believe, is an allowable expense, and Denise or Kevin, pipe up if I'm misspeaking. I believe would be an allowable expense. It's related to farm to school, and either in the education side of things or in the cafeteria side of things. I believe to answer the staff question, yes, it can be used to expand staff time of an existing staff member. So as long as there's the staff time being paid for is to expand the farm to school programming. So it wouldn't be able to pay for a kitchen staff member or an education staff member doing their normal work. Denise, is that clear how I described that?
Yeah, and I would just like clarify, let's say you have someone who works for you now that is a half FTE, and they're doing some type of work for you, maybe farm to school, maybe another type of work, and you want to expand their full-time equivalent to be full-time. You can pay for the second half of their FTE with the grant, so you're expanding their time. But you can't say, okay, we have an FTE who's already doing farm to school work, so we're just going to cover her salary and use like her existing salary with this grant. You have to expand the staff time.
Denise, I just to clarify that, and then also there's a question in the chat. How about a paid internship temporary position?
Yeah, I think that we would love to see in grant proposals, if someone is proposing staff, that there is a plan to keep that person on, right? Because the whole point is that we're providing funds that will hopefully live on, and that will be eventually sort of picked up or integrated into the standard work of your department. But if you are certain that that position will be temporary, you can certainly talk about that. That's not, it wouldn't mean that you wouldn't be able to fund that temporary position. But I think we are looking for ways that we can support a sustainable increase in farm to school in districts and in EEC and child care centers.
Thanks, Denise. Lisa, another question has come in, and the person said, I may have missed the answer to this question, but can funds be used to purchase local farm produce? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, and so they can, and because I'm recording and sharing, I can't get to the exact language, so I don't want to misspeak. The short answer is yes, but Denise, can you either, if you're looking at it, the details of that limitation, because there are some limitations or some specific language around that cost.
I feel like I see it in my sleep at this point. So you can buy food with the funds, but the food really needs to be used kind of for educational purposes or training purposes. So if you wanted to buy local produce to use when you're training your staff to process local produce, awesome. If you want to use local produce to do taste tests or like some sort of education with kids, great. What is not allowable is if you wanted to buy local produce to incorporate into a reimbursable meal, or buy local produce that you're then going to sell or use as a fundraiser. So as long as that food is being used for educational purposes, you're good.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you. There's another question. I'm sorry, Lisa, say again.
No, I was gonna say that, yep.
There's another question. Do we need to submit estimates from equipment and training providers? Do we need to submit estimates from equipment and training providers? Is the first question.
So we can, I can share at the end the links to the application documents, and I think you can dive into that. Denise, can you speak of the exact details of backup documentation that are required for the application?
I think that there's a basic, or there's a standard expectation that you're going to go through a procurement process for anything that you ultimately end up buying. So let's say you're going to buy a piece of equipment. This isn't the same as the equipment grants, where you need to sort of show that here's how much I'm being charged for it. You should, do your homework, find out how much would this equipment cost. Let's use the grow rack as an example, and budget for that amount when you submit your budget proposal. And then if you were to get awarded, you would do a proper procurement process to purchase that equipment. But we wouldn't be looking for upfront documentation of what something would cost. But Mass Farm to School, and Lisa's going to talk more about it, is going to offer some coaching and some individualized support to help you get a good sense of what stuff costs, so that you can make sure you don't overcommit, when you write your grant, and that you're being realistic with your prices.
All right, Lisa, there's a few other comments, but so someone asked, how do we get local food into cafeterias, or is that an entire other topic? And do you want to just quickly say how that it is another topic, like connecting to you?
I was going to say that's a quickly answer that question. Yes, I think that would be a great question for Mass Farm to School staff, depending on, it may be Dinah, if you're an educator, so Dinah is our education program manager, who is kindly joining us, but also one of the experts that will be providing coaching for this grant program. So I would say that's what we're here to help with in general is farm to school work. So certainly reach out to us either through the coaching session or otherwise, and we can help talk through that a bit more.
Yeah. And if it's in general, if the question is in general, like getting any local food into cafeterias, definitely get in touch with Mass Farm to School.
Yeah.
We can definitely help you start that. And then there's a question, could an eligible activity include funding both transportation and programming costs for field trips to a local urban farm? So any field trips would this grant cover?
I believe yes, because those are education activities and farm to school activities. So I would say yes, that would be an allowable cost.
All right. And then the last question I'm just answering is yes, everyone is going to have access to this slide deck and the video. Correct. And email addresses for further questions. All right.
Yes.
Cleared the chat so far, Lisa.
Great. So moving on to timeline and project details. And so the RFP is live now. We'll show that link if you have not already found it on the Department of Ed website or our website. But applications will be open through 5 p.m. on the last day of January 31st. And then DESE anticipates releasing or dispersing those funds early in spring of 2023. So pretty quick turnaround with an anticipation project duration of up to 18 months. And so they really were thoughtful about designing the program so that you would have funds available for the entire next school year, if needed. If you're looking for a smaller project, you're looking for some funds for like someone mentioned, a piece of equipment or some startup garden infrastructure, and want to really get a program started this school year, that's also fine. You're not required, obviously, to take the full 18 months, but that you do have the flexibility to have a project run through 23-24 school year, so the end of June 2024. And then just a clarification, if you are on the and or go to the application website, there is some talk around projects being completed by June 2023, the end of the fiscal year. And that's simply because of the little bit of an awkward split in FY23, FY24 fiscal years. And so, like I said, DESE was really intentional about allowing schools or projects to last for the entire 18 months. And so by doing so, they had to split the funding over the 2 fiscal years. And so there could be some additional paperwork with like a no cost extension that allows you to spend the funds throughout the rest of that school year through 2024. And we can talk a little bit more about that in the question and answer. But if you're looking at the application, you will see some mention of the end of the fiscal year with a anticipated no cost extension being allowable for the next fiscal year.
Lisa, we do have one hand up. I don't know if you can see Jenny's hand is up.
I can't.
So Jenny, do you have a question, or do you want to ask now that's relevant to this, or save
Yeah,
it?
it's relevant. It's really quick. I just want to confirm, because you said school year, even if there's a summer camp being run by public schools here, this funding can't go towards that. Is that correct?
So you mean the timeline, so that this funding does have to be spent by June 30th, 2024.
Right. But so none of that funding can be like, it has to be in schools during the school term, or it can happen during a summer camp if it's during.
Oh, Denise, do you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, I think that is a hair that I'm seeing how it's going to be split. So can I put a gold star great question that I don't totally have the answer for?
No problem. Okay.
But I will follow up with Lisa, and she can, and we'll share that back out in our newsletter as well.
Yeah.
So that everybody can hear.
Yeah,
It is a
Yeah, but funding
it's
it
tricky.
spring, we could use it for this coming summer for a school program, summer camp.
and
we
the summer camp would be
But
run
I'll let you
by the SFA.
it would be run by Boston Public Schools.
So it would be run by the SFA. Okay, that is applying for the grant.
Yeah, I'm a partner organization that does already farming work with them. And so we're trying to figure out how to do it, but it would be through Boston Public Schools.
Thank you.
So yes, Jenny, we can get back to you specifically, and what we'll do on Mass Farm to Schools, and I'll share this later. We have a website that has all of this information. We'll post the slides and the recording. We have a little FAQ piece at the end, and we'll make sure to post that answer in the FAQ section as well. So we'll all get it, and I'll share that out with everyone.
There's one more question in the chat, Lisa, and Denise, and you might have mentioned this. The question is, can the money be used for a new school garden in a new school?
Certainly. So the funding is intentionally worded as startup or expansion. And so it can certainly go to new school gardening efforts, infrastructure, programming, PD. Yes. And so moving on to the application process, I just wanted to share the screenshot of the location of the application. We've had a few questions around the location. It's not on COMBIs, which, if you're familiar with grants through the state of Massachusetts, sometimes you're applying through a portal COMBIs, but this is on the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed's website. So again, we'll post this link further on, but just to give you a little bit of context of what you'll be going to. And really, this is the place with all of the details. And it also provides the links for the required forms. And so you'll see here, you have three required forms that they've linked here for download. So you can download those and really work on them, as you're going along. It's not an online form that you need to complete all at once. Download them, work on them, share them, collaborate around them. And then what you'll be doing is emailing your completed application with these forms and any supporting documents to this MAFresh@mass.gov website. And so I will point out that any school member can complete and submit the grant application, school or early education site staff member. But the grant funds will be, because of the nature of the funding, will be distributed through the school nutrition department. And so again, an application that's focusing on school garden or professional development for educators is great, allowable, no issues, but the applicant will have to be aware that the funds will be distributed through the school nutrition department and collaborate, or at least be in contact with and get some information from the school nutrition department. There are some questions around school nutrition and National School Lunch Program or CICFP on the application. And so you will need to do a little bit of communication with that school nutrition department, and at the very least. And like I said, some of the larger grants are really excited or focused on holistic programs to integrate those pieces. So that may be happening already, that collaboration. And so as you're digging into those application materials, looking at the DESE website with the additional information, we have Mass Farm to School through our coalition work, which is Massachusetts Food for Massachusetts Kids. We have on that website a kind of a one-stop shop grant info page. Like I said, we have an FAQs, but we have most of the information I presented today is on that website. So you can scroll through that or share that with any collaborators. We also, and I think Denise alluded to this, we will be providing some additional support after today's webinar. Mass Farm to School is excited to support this program and will be providing one-on-one coaching sessions for applicants in January. Myself, my co-director Simca Horowitz, and our education program manager Dinah Mack, who is kindly helping co-present today, will be available for coaching for about a 20-minute session in January. And on our MA Food for MA Kids website, that Farm to School grant page, are links to sign up for those specific sessions. And so as you're digging into your application, and really this is designed for specific questions about your application, eligible costs, that type of thing, or like, we have this idea, what do you think? You want to bounce a couple of different ideas off of us. We're happy to spend some time really talking about your specific application. We do recommend you, if you're not here today, or if others haven't had a chance to sit here and go through these slides or the website, to really do that first, and then using these sessions to really dig into the specifics of an application. So you'll find that on there, and there's some direct links just to sign in through, I think it's Calendly it's called, to sign up for some specific times. And if none of those work for you, get in touch with us. We can make something work outside of those allocated time slots. And obviously you can't click on these now, but they'll be available through the slideshow and on our website, the direct link to the application, the MA Food for MA Kids, MA Fresh grant information page. We have our general website, massfarmtoschool.org, for more farm to school resources as you're thinking about projects. If you're looking, I really am excited about this. I wonder, are there resources around curriculum, local recipes, taste testing? I'd really recommend you stop there, massfarmtoschool.org. That's a great place to start kind of if you're looking for additional resources as you're thinking through your project. And then just myself and my co-director's direct email. We're happy to answer any questions. And if we can't, we'll obviously try to find out the answer for you. And that is it. I'll stop sharing. And I'm happy to take some time to answer any questions, provide further clarification at this time. And maybe just either raise your hand or take your self off mute, but we do have about 60 people on, so maybe try to do it orally if you want to raise your hand if you have a question, or pop it into the chat. Happy to do that. That's easier, more comfortable. Denise, did you, as folks are thinking about questions, was there other pieces or clarification you wanted to provide?
No, I think you did a fantastic job of hitting all the notes. I did a little back read on a few things, and I think that the intent of the funds is to be used by public schools, schools that and childcare. And I think that if a SFA applies for funds and it can be used during the summer months, as long as it is the SFA that is doing the work, like that the SFA is serving the location where the activities are happening. So if the SFA has a site at XYZ location and they want to operate a summer site at XYZ location, and they want to operate some grant activities at that site, then I think that is good. If the SFA was going to fund activities at a place they didn't serve meals, in the summer, then that wouldn't work. But as long as the SFA is operating a site during the period when they are operating grant activities, then I think that is good to go, and we can help splice that if anybody has any other questions about that. And I just want to say that the department is so excited to partner with Mass Farm to School and to be offering these funds. And we're hoping, we are excited and hope that the application process is clear and streamlined, and that your experience using the funds is good. So that's all I have to say.
We have, Lisa, we have Jenny has a hand up, and then we also have a confirmation in the chat, which says, just to confirm, this isn't just for public schools, right? Is it okay for an independent school that is an NSLP sponsor to apply?
Correct. Yes. Sponsors of the NSL National School Lunch Program can apply. Yep. Correct.
Right. Jenny, is your hand up new, or is it still just?
It is new, but if anyone else has a question, I can wait.
No, go ahead. Shoot.
Okay, so we work with schools in East Boston, and we're already doing like farming and gardening programs and everything, and we want our produce in schools, and they want our produce in the schools too, but we aren't the vendor for the lunch program, and so we're wondering if, and that can't change because it's Boston wide. And so we're wondering if we supplemented the vendor City Fresh with produce for snacks, or like just fresh fruits, for example, throughout the school year, which they would be open to also. Would that be something that this could be used for funding for?
I will answer, and I'll also let Denise make sure that my interpretation of that would be a no, because it's not an educational purpose. It would be supplementing the national program.
So just to clarify, we are doing the educational work already. Our educators go into these schools and they pay us to do like weekly environmental education and holistic food system classes. And then we have school gardens that we already maintain, but then we want the kids to actually be eating the produce, some of which we would grow, but a lot we acquire from local farms just because we don't have enough space. So that's the missing piece.
Yeah. And I think, again, I'll let Denise clarify if I'm not interpreting this in the same way that she would be, in that and this is really this may be like a coaching, let's really zero in on how we're talking about this. But I think if you are providing that education programming, and at the same time, you're bringing in pairs, because you're doing pairs in a whatever, and you're buying the pairs to do the taste test or the cooking that you're doing with students, That is that's the interpretation that I have, is that that's the educational purpose. If you're doing, talking about pairs and doing, activity, and then also, like, as part of their regular snack, they're gonna get local pairs, like a couple days later, or like throughout the month. I don't know that, I'm not sure about that, Denise, like.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we don't want funds from this grant to supplement food costs or meals, snacks, a la carte fundraisers that are already being paid for. So like, let's say, for example, you were gonna do like some education, make some fresh salsa with some local tomatoes, right? And you were gonna do a taste test, but you also wanted that salsa to be served as part of the snack. So you provide, I'm gonna make up a number, the school with 10 pounds of tomatoes, and 1 pound of those tomatoes are used in the little taste test table, but 9 pounds are going to be used to produce the snack. You can claim the 1 pound that's being used in the little taste test table under this grant, but those 9 pounds are already being paid for through different funding streams. So we don't want to double pay that. So think strictly about only education, nothing in meals served or snacks served or meals sold or fundraisers or anything like that.
Okay, I'm just gonna make one comment just for you to take back to sort of the envisioning of this program, because this is a barrier we keep coming against, and where nobody is paying for that food because it's such a big provider, the vendor. And so we're teaching all of these farming programs and growing programs, and then the kids are eating Oreos and other, stuff like that. So that's just like a thing to think about for future grants for an integrated approach. But thank you for your answers. And yeah.
And I just want to circle back. I interpreted the way the person asked the question about, is there money for food that can the money be, some question about where is money for food that's being included in the program? And I would say keep your ears up, because there's a lot that's in the pipeline. So there will be some funding streams for food in meals, but this is just not it.
We had a few questions come in the chat. So Chetna asked, can the money be used for extending contracts with current partners who provide support for school garden education, activities, and lessons in the classroom? And I would answer that yes, that if you're contracting with a school garden expert to come in and provide a service, say at one location, and you want to expand that work to a second garden bed, and you're expanding that farm to school work, and you're partnering with a community organization to do that work, Denise, that would be an allowable.
It just can't extend. I thought I read the word extend. So if you have an existing partnership and they're doing existing work, you can't say we're going to extend the contract and pay for it using the grant.
Oh, I see.
You can expand.
Yes, right. I guess I was thinking of expanding, and your extending timeline is at kind of status quo. Continuing what you've already been done would not be an allowable cost. But if you're looking to expand the suite of services or the amount of services that garden organization, I'm making that up, but that contractor is providing, that would be an allowable cost. I apologize. That was my misinterpretation of the question.
Denise, do you see the chat? Do you see the question in the chat now about the equipment in the kitchen?
So we are preparing lunches from scratch. We have a garden. We would like to scale up and use vegetables from our garden in the meals. is purchasing kitchen equipment for washing vegetables and eligible expense awesome? And maybe something that is, we're gonna like, if you can always use food that you've grown in the garden in meals. So if you're using funds to make a garden, and then that produce then gets folded into meals, do you know what I mean? Like if you've got funds, if you ask for a grant to create a garden and that garden produces food, you can use that food in your meals. You just can't buy that food off the bat and put it into the meals. So in this scenario, you can absolutely purchase kitchen equipment for washing vegetables, and that those vegetables can be used in your meals.
Questions, other questions? Any clarifications we can provide? I'm just going to go ahead and also, oh, sorry.
There is a question, if a full-time teacher got paid a stipend for a new activity outside of a full-time, if a full-time teacher got paid a stipend for a new activity, I think this means outside of their full-time work, summer program after school, is that allowed? I
Yes.
think that's what that's saying.
That would be allowed, correct. Yes.
What are the reporting requirements for the grantees? A lot of questions. What are the reporting requirements for grantees? How frequently and what data?
I'm going to let Denise answer this because
Yeah. Truthfully, we have not fully nailed that down yet. There will likely be some form of, quarterly or semi-annual reports that we'll request. And I think that we need to see what type of objectives that folks come up with. It will likely be the data reporting will likely be around the objectives and the data markers that you share in your application. Like when you look into the application, you'll see that we kind of limited you, for your sake and for ours, to 3 objectives and then some data benchmarks. So the reporting will mirror the application, but we don't have a clear sense of that at this moment.
Denise, there's another question. So confirming nonprofits can apply for this funding and not just schools, as long as the schools are the ones benefiting from the program and school garden.
right. No,
Yes,
so,
and this is something we're so grateful to have Lisa and Simca educated us on, that you can apply, but we have a mechanism to pay school food authorities. So that money is going to flow through them. So however that works in your relationship, just know that you can apply, but the person who's going to get paid is going to be the school food authority.
right. So the official applicant is the school food authority. So I think, I think it was Jenny that asked that question. In Jenny's case, it would be Boston Public Schools receiving the money and then however it's worked, subcontracting or like providing the funding and support to the nonprofit. Sorry, I'm also trying, Dinah, so I'm trying to keep up. I think Greta asked a question about kitchen equipment, if there was a list of helpful kitchen equipment for farm to school, and we don't have one, but I think that's a great idea and a great question. So I'll note that, and maybe that's something Mass Farm to School can start to think about, is compiling a list from resources we know of, and then also opening it back out to all of you and food service directors to chime in on. And Denise may know of resources that already exist from her work. So maybe we'll be able to put that on our website if you're looking for ideas or suggestions.
I know Chetna has a couple of questions. Before Chetna asks the questions, someone asked if the grant could be used to fix an existing greenhouse or expand it to allow for seedlings before placing into a school garden. So can this go to a greenhouse repair or expansion?
So expansion for sure, because that would be expanding your work. I think if you're a little bit in the details and in the weeds, but if you're talking about if repairing this greenhouse so you can then deepen the programming or expand the farm to school work, and talking about how that repair is necessary to further that programming, yes, I would interpret that as a yes. And I see Denise shaking her head and also in agreement.
All right, Chetna, you have a couple questions.
Yes, sorry. I am not going to take too long. First of all, thank you so much. What an opportunity. We are excited to apply, and already the creativity bug is going everywhere. But my question was one quick clarification question. In schools, where does this grant house? Because it's, if like the way we have a farm to school grant that's coming, that has already come to an end. Does it stay almost like a farm to school grant where we have food service director and our current team just work as a team, and we have a program director or who would be in kind 100%? Just wanted to kind of have a clarification. Is it staying with the school lunch program, or is it just a separate grant? I hope I'm not creating confusion here.
I guess I'm not so I'm not sure exactly if I quite understand what the details of your question, Chetna, but so the funding will come through the financial streams of your school food authority, your cafeteria, where the programming lives. So it could be that a school applies just for school garden work or PD of educators, and that's fine. But knowing that it comes through the school food authority budget, and then honestly, I think, how your school then works that that budget wise, I think it's kind of up to the internal.
Yeah. I sort of know the answer, but I was just thinking of where it should live, so it's easier. But because it depends on you, as you're saying, what our main goals and priorities are, and that will determine how the budget gets sort of utilized. And the second quick question was that, is there, if and when the new grantees are announced, whenever new grant, would there be a time for us to know the vision and ideas of different grantees, what they are working? Because I always feel like I learn so much more from what other grantees are doing, and because everyone else, everyone is different and creative in their own ways. Yes,
that's a great question and point, Jenna. Yes, for sure. I think one thing that DESE is extremely supportive of and has really been excited about, and Mass Farm to School is excited about, is supporting grantees throughout the process. So not just this application process and then, send you off on your way and best of luck with the next 18 months, is that we're really excited to support grantees throughout the process. And exactly what that looks like, we're still in the flux, and it also depends on how many awardees there'll be and exactly but I know that we'll provide support. And what we're really looking forward to is sharing the stories with grantees, but also, collecting stories to share it with the greater stakeholders of Farm to School. So that's something that we're excited to support, like a networking platform, technical assistance as you're going along in your process. Mass Farm to School will be doing as part of our collaboration with DESE. So yes, that's something that we're really looking forward to for the individual projects, but also kind of as we look forward to like moving Farm to School along in a bigger context. I think that's incredibly important.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Lisa, can I just pass in one last thought of this is not a one and done grant like opportunity. We're working on offering it again as we get into next fall. So if you feel like this is a good time for you to apply, definitely apply, but no, it isn't like a do or die time. And that if you feel like you want to put stuff in your back pocket and do a little bit more planning, there will be another opportunity. There's two that we're definitely looking that I can say exist. So just know that there is another round that will be coming if this feels like too much of a pressure on time.
It is just a few minutes before 11. So last call for questions. Be respectful of everyone's time. And I will say I dropped the link to Mass Farm to Schools website into the chat for those coaching sessions, but also more information. That's where we'll post these slides in the recording, and we'll additionally share it out to everyone who registered today. And also you'll be able to find contact information for myself, for our staff at Mass Farm to School. Please don't hesitate to reach out directly if we can provide further clarification, or if a question comes to you as you're digging into the application materials. We're happy to help as you go through that process. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you coming, and really look forward to helping you in how we can throughout the application process, and best of luck with your applications. Thank you.